Dominic Foster adjusted his custom-tailored jacket as he gazed out from his penthouse office at the sprawling city below. At 32, he had built quantum innovations from a dorm room project into a tech empire valued at $17 billion. The afternoon sun glinted off his collection of industry awards lining the shelves behind his minimalist desk. "Mr. Foster, the Meridian team just confirmed tomorrow's signing ceremony," announced Olivia Reed, his chief of staff, entering with a tablet in hand. "Their legal department sent over the final version of the contract." "Excellent," Dominic replied, taking the tablet. "This partnership will revolutionize how we integrate our quantum computing systems into global infrastructure." The deal with Meridian Global Construction had been 6 months in the making. The joint venture promised to integrate Dominic's groundbreaking quantum systems into smart buildings across 30 countries. Financial projections estimated a $20 billion revenue stream over 5 years. "Ms. Reed, please confirm our legal team has reviewed everything," Dominic said, scrolling through the dense contract text. "They've signed off on it," Olivia assured him. Though Richard in legal mentioned he wished they had more time with the supply chain addendums. Apparently Meridian's lawyers made some last-minute adjustments. Dominic frowned slightly. Last-minute adjustments. Nothing substantial, according to Richard. Just clarifying language on patent implementation and supply exclusivity. He said it's standard boilerplate for deals of this magnitude. "I see," Dominic murmured. He trusted his legal team, but something about the timing felt off. "I'd like to review these sections myself tonight." After Olivia left, Dominic was joined by his oldest friend and business partner, Wesley Torres. "Tomorrow's the big day," Wesley said, pouring 2 glasses of scotch. "Remember when our biggest concern was making rent for our first office?" Dominic smiled, accepting the drink. "And now, we're about to close the largest tech construction partnership in history." "Julian Bennett from Meridian called," Wesley mentioned. Casually, he's particularly excited about the exclusivity arrangements. Said something about revolutionizing how technology ownership functions in partnerships. Dominic's intuition flickered. Bennett was Meridian's acquisition specialist, known for engineering corporate takeovers through complex contractual mechanisms. Why is their acquisition lead so interested in our partnership agreement? Dominic wondered aloud. Probably just internal politics, Wesley shrugged. Everyone wants to take credit for their big deals. Later that evening, the contract documents spread across his home office. Dominic found himself unable to focus. The legal language was deliberately convoluted, with cross-references that seemed designed to obscure rather than clarify. Frustrated, decided some fresh air might help clear his mind. Grabbing the printed contract, he headed toward the extensive gardens of his estate, where the evening primroses were beginning to open in the fading light. What he didn't know was that this simple walk would completely transform his future. That wisdom would come from the most unexpected source. Asterisk. The evening air carried the sweet scent of jasmine as Dominic wandered through the meticulously maintained paths of his estate gardens. The stress of the impending deal had been building. For weeks, and the tranquility of nature provided a welcome respite. He had brought the contract with him, hoping that distance from his office might bring clarity to the confusing clauses that had been nagging at him. As he rounded a corner near the rose garden, he spotted an elderly man carefully pruning a row of prize tea roses. Rajiv Patel had been the head gardener at the estate for over 2 decades, having come to the country with an agricultural degree and a passion for botanical cultivation. Though they rarely had lengthy conversations, Dominic had always appreciated the old man's quiet dedication. "Good evening, Mr. Patel," Dominic called out. The gardener straightened with some effort, offering a gentle smile. "Evening, sir. Beautiful night to be among the flowers, isn't it?" "Deed it is," Dominic agreed, stopping to admire the roses. "Your work here is extraordinary. Thank you, sir. Plants are honest creatures. They tell you exactly what they need." "If you know how to listen," Mr. Patel said, removing his worn gloves. "Unlike some people I've encountered in my time." Something in the old man's tone caught Dominic's attention. "You sound like you've had your share of experience with dishonest people," Mr. Patel chuckled softly.
Before.
"I found my calling with plants. I worked as a paralegal for 30 years, saw all manner of clever tricks hidden in innocent-looking paperwork. Dominic looked down at the contract in his hands, then back at the gardener with renewed interest. Is that so? I'm actually struggling with some contract language for a deal I'm signing tomorrow. Business matters are far above my station now, sir, Mr. Patel said humbly. Perhaps, but a fresh perspective might be exactly what I need, Dominic replied, surprising himself with the request. Would you mind taking a look? The gardener carefully wiped his hands on a cloth before accepting the document. He adjusted his reading glasses and began scanning the pages with unexpected efficiency. Dominic watched as the older man's expression shifted from curiosity to concern. After several minutes, Mr. Patel pointed to a section buried deep within the supply chain addendum. This clause here, sir, connected to this definition on page 17. It creates what we used to call a cascade trigger. What does that mean exactly? Dominic asked, leaning closer. If your company fails to meet any supply timeline, even Biodathis grants Meridian automatic licensing rights to all applied technologies. And this clause here. He turned several pages, pointing to another section. Defines applied technologies to include all patent innovations, even those not directly used in this specific partnership. Dominic felt a chill despite the warm evening. That would essentially give them ownership of our entire intellectual property portfolio if we miss a single deadline. Precisely. Mr. Patel nodded gravely. And these supply requirements on page 43? Nearly impossible to meet consistently? My old firm specialized in intellectual property disputes. This contract isn't designed for partnership, sir. Designed for acquisition through technical default.
Oh.
Dominic took the contract back, mind racing. They're not looking for a partner. They're setting a trap to own my company without having to buy it outright. I wouldn't presume to understand such high-level business matters, Mr. Patel said carefully, returning to his roses. But in my garden, I've learned to recognize predators, even when they're disguised as something beautiful. As darkness fell across the garden, Dominic stared at the contract with new understanding. His legal team had missed it. His executives had missed it. Yet this elderly gardener had spotted the trap immediately. Mr. Patel, you may have just saved my life's work, Dominic said quietly. The old gardener simply smiled. Even the smallest seed can grow into something that changes the landscape, sir. The question now is what you'll plant tomorrow. Walking back toward his house with renewed purpose, Dominic knew he had less than 12 hours to devise a strategy that would not only avoid the trap, but turn the situation to his advantage. His phone buzzed with a message from Julian Bennett of Meridian. Looking forward to welcoming you to the Meridian family tomorrow. They had no idea what was coming. The grandfather clock in Dominic's study chimed midnight as he paced the room, phone pressed to his ear. No, Naomi. I need you to listen carefully. I'm not canceling the deal, I'm rewriting it. Naomi Jackson, his chief legal counsel, sounded exhausted on the other end. Dominic, the signing is in 9 hours. Meridian's entire executive board is flying in for this. Can't just rewrite a multi-billion-dollar contract overnight. We have to, Dominic insisted. I need it done with absolute discretion. No one outside our immediate circle can know what we're doing. After ending the call, Dominic turned to Wesley and Olivia, who sat surrounded by legal documents and laptops. For the past 3 hours, they had been dissecting every aspect of the Meridian trap. The brilliance of their strategy is its subtlety, Wesley admitted grudgingly. Even if we caught the default triggers after signing, challenging them would be nearly impossible without exposing our supply chain weaknesses to the entire market. Olivia looked up from her notes. We've identified 37 separate clauses designed to create impossible performance requirements, but how do we counter this without alerting them? Dominic walked to the whiteboard where he had been mapping out his strategy. We don't fight the trap, we redirect it. Here's what we're going to do, ... By 3 a.m, Dominic had assembled a small team of his most trusted executives and legal experts. Each was assigned a specific component of what he called Operation Mirror. Remember, everything must appear normal, he instructed them. Meridian expects a eager, slightly naive tech company grateful for their partnership. That's exactly what we'll give them on the surface. At 4:30, Naomi returned with the modified contract pages. These look identical to the originals, but the language has been subtly altered, as you requested. The changes are virtually undetectable unless you're specifically looking for them. And our special edition? Dominic asked. Naomi handed him a separate document. Addendum 1-B looks like standard regulatory compliance language. No one reads these closely because they're usually boilerplate, but this one reverses the ownership trigger completely, Dominic finished, scanning the document with satisfaction. Instead of them gaining our patents through defaults, we gain controlling interest in their regional operations if they attempt to enforce any exclusivity provisions. As dawn broke, Dominic sent everyone home to rest and prepare. He himself remained in his study, rehearsing the complex performance that would be required at the signing ceremony. Every word, every gesture needed to convey exactly the right impression. At 7, he finally stepped into his shower, letting the hot water wash away the night's tension. As he dressed in his most expensive suit, a power move designed to suggest he was trying too hard to impress, his phone buzzed with a text from Julian Bennett, just landed.
Now looking forward to bringing quantum into the Meridian family today.
The future begins at noon. Dominic smiled grimly at his reflection as he adjusted his tie. Yes, it does, he murmured. It's just not the future you're expecting. At 9, he made a detour through his gardens, finding Mr. Patel carefully tending to a bed of orchids. I wanted to thank you again, Dominic said. Your insight may have saved my company. The gardener nodded wisely. In my homeland, there is an old saying, the cobra that strikes at the mongoose often finds itself caught by the neck. Let's hope that proves true today, Dominic replied, as his driver pulled the car around. Dominic felt a strange calm settle over him. The next few hours would determine the fate of everything he had built. $17 billion and the livelihoods of thousands of employees hung in the balance. His phone rang once more. It was Olivia. Everything is in place, she said simply. Then it's time to spring our own trap, Dominic replied, sliding into the back seat of his car and directing his driver toward Meridian's regional headquarters. The game was about to begin. Asterisk. The gleaming headquarters of Meridian Global Construction towered over the financial district, its glass facade reflecting the midday sun like a monument to corporate power. Dominic's car pulled into the private underground garage, where a reception committee awaited. Mr. Foster, welcome to Meridian, greeted Julian Bennett, the company's acquisition specialist. His handshake was firm, his smile practiced. Bennett had orchestrated some of the most ruthless corporate takeovers of the past decade. The board is assembled upstairs. Everyone is quite excited about our future together. As am I, Dominic replied with carefully calibrated enthusiasm. This partnership represents a new chapter for both our companies. As they rode the executive elevator to the top floor, Bennett made small talk about Quantum's recent stock performance. In market position, Dominic noted how the conversation subtly probed for financial vulnerabilities. The boardroom doors opened to reveal a scene designed to intimidate. 22 executives sat around a massive table with Meridian's CEO, Eleanor Fitzgerald, at its head. A woman known for her strategic brilliance and uncompromising approach to business, Fitzgerald had transformed Meridian from a regional contractor to a global construction empire. Mr. Foster, she called out, not rising from her seat. We finally meet in person. Please join us. Dominic approached with measured confidence, taking the empty seat positioned directly under the room's brightest. Lighting a subtle psychological tactic he recognized from negotiation theory, Wesley and Naomi took seats further down the table, while Olivia remained standing near the doorway. I understand you had some last-minute questions about our agreement, Fitzgerald began, a hint of impatience in her tone. I hope those have been resolved to your satisfaction. Completely resolved, Dominic assured her. My legal team was just being thorough. It's what I pay them for. This elicited polite laughter around the table. Dominic noticed several executives exchange knowing glances. Then, shall we proceed to the signing? Bennett suggested, nodding to an assistant who began distributing leather-bound copies of the contract. Dominic accepted his copy with an appreciative nod. Before we begin, I'd like to express my gratitude for how Meridian has approached this partnership. Your attention to detail in crafting this agreement has been ... educational. Something in his tone caused Fitzgerald to look up sharply, but Dominic had already turned his attention to the contract, flipping through it with apparent eagerness. "I've taken the liberty of preparing a small addendum," Dominic mentioned casually. "Nothing significant, just some regulatory compliance language our lawyers insist upon for all partnerships." Bennett frowned slightly. "Addendums should have been submitted well in advance, Mr. Foster." "It's truly minor," Dominic assured him, signaling to Olivia, who distributed copies of Addendum 1 to B. "Standard boilerplate regarding intellectual property protections under international law. Sure your legal team will find it completely uncontroversial." The Meridian executives glanced at the document with minimal interest. Such last-minute regulatory additions were common in major deals, and the language appeared routine to an untrained eye. "Very well," Fitzgerald conceded after a cursory glance. "Let's not delay further over technicalities." The signing ceremony proceeded with practiced formality. Cameras flashed as each page was initialed, each signature applied with fountain pens bearing the Meridian logo. Throughout the process, Dominic maintained an expression of barely contained excitement. Exactly what was expected of a young tech entrepreneur landing his first major industrial partnership. When the final signature was applied, applause broke out around the table. Champagne appeared as if by magic, and congratulatory handshakes were exchanged. "A toast," Fitzgerald announced, raising her glass. "To a partnership that will transform both our companies." "Indeed it will," Dominic agreed, meeting her eyes directly for the first time. Something in his gaze made her pause. As the celebration continued, Bennett sidled up to Dominic. "Between us," he said quietly, "you've made a wise decision today. Quantum's technology is impressive, but without proper industrial application, it would never reach its full potential." "I couldn't agree more about proper application," Dominic replied. "By the way, I particularly appreciated the elegance of your cascade trigger mechanism in Section 27. Brilliant legal construction." Bennett's smile froze. "I'm not sure what you're referring to." "The default provisions," Dominic clarified, his voice still casual but his eyes hard as steel. "The ones designed to transfer my patent rights to Meridian, when your impossible supply requirements inevitably force a technical default." Bennett's face drained of color. "How did you but what I found truly innovative?" Dominic continued. "My entire legal team missed it. Fortunately, I have a gardener with an exceptional eye for predatory species." Before Bennett could respond, Dominic raised his voice slightly. "Ms. Reed, I believe it's time for our presentation." Olivia stepped forward with a tablet, activating the boardroom's main display screen. On it appeared a side-by-side comparison of the original contract clauses and the modified versions that had actually been signed. The room fell silent as the Meridian executives realized what they were seeing. "You changed the contract," Fitzgerald stated, her voice dangerously quiet. "I merely adjusted it to reflect the true spirit of partnership," Dominic replied calmly. "It stipulates that any attempt to enforce exclusivity or default provisions automatically triggers a reverse acquisition clause, giving Quantum controlling interest in Meridian's technology, implementation divisions." The silence in the room became absolute. "In simpler terms," Dominic concluded, "the trap you set for me is now pointed at you. We're welcome to proceed with our partnership exactly as written, a genuine, mutually beneficial collaboration. Or you can attempt to seize my company and lose control of yours instead." Bennett's whispered expletive could be heard throughout the stunned boardroom. "The choice, of course, is entirely yours," Dominic added, raising his champagne glass in a final toast. Asterisk. The business world exploded with speculation in the days following what financial media dubbed the quantum reversal. Stock prices for both companies fluctuated wildly as rumors spread about the confrontation in Meridian's boardroom. Officially, both corporations released a joint statement affirming their groundbreaking strategic partnership with mutually beneficial terms. 3 weeks after the signing, Dominic stood in his garden at sunset, watching Mr. Patel carefully transplanting young seedlings into a newly prepared bed. "The board finalized our restructured deal with Meridian this morning," Dominic informed the gardener. "Eleanor Fitzgerald has agreed to a truly equitable partnership. With transparent terms and reasonable expectations on both sides." Mr. Patel nodded without looking up from his work. "Plants and people both grow better when they aren't trying to choke each other out, sir," Dominic smiled at the simple wisdom. Meridian has removed Julian Bennett from their executive team, apparently. His acquisition strategies have put them at legal risk with several other partners. Not surprising, the old gardener commented. A person who digs one trap will likely dig many. In the distance, Olivia approached along the garden path, tablet in hand as always. When she reached them, she nodded respectfully to Mr. Patel before addressing Dominic. The technology integration teams from both companies have submitted their first joint proposal, she reported. The preliminary projections suggest a 30% increase over our original revenue estimates. When collaboration replaces conquest, everyone prospers, Dominic observed. After Olivia departed, Dominic helped Mr. Patel carry a tray of tools to the garden shed. Inside the small wooden structure, he noticed a framed law degree from a prestigious university hanging discreetly on the wall. Never mentioned you were a full attorney, not just a paralegal, Dominic remarked with surprise. Mr. Patel shrugged slightly. I found greater peace working with things that grow than with those designed to constrain. But the knowledge never leaves you. Why continue as a gardener when you could command a significant salary in corporate law? The older man smiled. Looking out at the garden, now bathed in golden evening light, I spent 30 years watching people try to control, constrain, and trap one another with words on paper. Here, I create beauty and life with my hands. Which would you choose? Wisdom of the question struck Dominic deeply. Since the Meridian confrontation, financial publications had hailed him as a business genius, a strategic mastermind. Yet his greatest victory had come not from cunning or aggression, but from listening to wisdom from an unexpected source. Evening, Dominic hosted a small dinner party at his estate for his core executive team. As they enjoyed drinks on the terrace overlooking the illuminated gardens, he made an announcement that surprised everyone. Effective immediately, we're establishing the Wisdom Council, he explained. A diverse advisory board composed of people from outside our traditional business circles, including our head gardener, Mr. Patel. Wesley nearly choked on his drink. You're putting the gardener on an executive advisory council? I am, Dominic confirmed. And not just him. We're recruiting perspectives from education, social services, environmental sciences people whose expertise lies entirely outside our technological bubble. It's unconventional, Naomi commented diplomatically. So is surviving a corporate trap that our entire legal department missed, Dominic countered. The Meridian situation taught me that wisdom often comes from unexpected sources, and that surrounding ourselves only with people who think as we do creates dangerous blind spots. The following month, Quantum Innovations announced its Wisdom Council initiative to the business world. Financial analysts initially mocked the concept as a publicity stunt or a billionaire's eccentric hobby. Their tone changed dramatically when the council's first recommendation, an ethical AI framework that anticipated regulatory changes by nearly a year, positioned quantum to secure government contracts worth billions while competitors scrambled to comply with new legislation. 6 months after the Meridian signing, Dominic and Eleanor Fitzgerald stood together at the groundbreaking ceremony for their first joint project, a revolutionary smart city development integrating quantum's computing systems with Meridian's sustainable construction methods. Fitzgerald admitted quietly as cameras flashed around them. Our original approach would have destroyed the value in both our companies. This true partnership has created something neither of us could have built alone. The best strategies aren't about winning at someone else's expense, Dominic replied. They're about finding the path where everyone moves forward. Later that evening, Dominic walked through his gardens alone, reflecting on how a simple conversation among the roses had altered the trajectory of his life and company. Near the orchid beds, he spotted a small stone bench that hadn't been there before. A discreet plaque was embedded in its surface, engraved with words that made him smile. Wisdom grows in unlikely places. Remember to listen. It was Mr. Patel's quiet way of marking their fateful conversation. Dominic sat on the bench as twilight deepened around him. 32-year-old billionaire humbled by the recognition that his greatest business triumph had come not from his wealth or power, but from the simple act of listening to an elderly gardener on a summer evening in the competitive world of corporate titans. Nothing had shocked the business community more than this fundamental truth. Sometimes the most valuable strategic advice comes from the most unexpected sources. The wisdom to recognize it is worth more than billions. Asterisk.